the left, which is all about the trans thing, it's all about, you know, gays, it's all about all that sort of stuff, is stuff that the Muslim nation abhors and wants to get rid of, doesn't it? That's the point. And they're embracing it at the moment, the left, not seeing that if Islam does take a hold, if Sharia law does take a hold in this country. And by the way, I've been reflecting on this. I can't blame the Muslims for what they're doing in this country. They've been invited in, they've been given the opportunity, and they're just simply taking advantage of it. And why wouldn't you?
And been told for decades, don't change.
Yeah, don't
Your
change.
culture's just as valuable as our culture. Your religion's just as good as our religion. Don't change. Keep all your practices. Keep all and so they're just doing what they've been told to do. Not once have the immigrant communities in this country ever been told to integrate, ever been forced to assimilate. Does that happen?
So I think the Muslims or the Islam is doing what comes naturally. And what comes naturally is our ideology. And our ideology involves in both, because Islam ideology is it's not a religion, it's an ideology, is Islam. It embraces religion, but also an entire way of living, which is Sharia law, basically. So what they will want to do, and naturally why wouldn't they want to do it? Because they've been invited in, come in, as you say, behave exactly as you have been doing in the country. Why wouldn't they want to say, well, we want Sharia law as well? And that's what they are saying, isn't it?
They are now,
They are saying that now. And you can't blame them, because they've been invited in to do that. But that Sharia law, if it takes place, all the communists, all the identity politics and all that crap will be destroyed immediately if that ever happens.
And this always happens when there's a power grab. So this just isn't Islam. So when Lenin took over Russia, he killed all the opposition. And they were all communists and socialists. They were just not his type of communist and socialist. There's a good video online during the Black Lives Matter riots in America, and there's some white people in an apartment with Black Lives Matter posters in the window. A riot marches past, and they start clapping and waving at them through the window. Yeah, you go. Da, da, da. They see these white people start throwing bricks through the window, and one of them is screaming through the window at the rioters, "We're on your side, we support you," as the bricks are coming through the window.
Yes, exactly.
Because being pink and fluffy and having an empathetic suicidal trait does not save you, because when there's a power grab, you eliminate all your enemies.
Yes. And if Islam takes hold here, and if Sharia, and you're probably listening to me now thinking, is Lindsay gone insane now? But you know, there is a reality we're facing here, that this could happen. This could happen. Islam basically invaded the Western society for over 800 years and got as far. And actually, I've only recently found out, they were actually off the coast of England in a small island called Lundy. Have you heard about this?
That wasn't Islam. That was
the
Barbary pirates.
Who were Muslims.
Yeah. Yes. But that had nothing to do with them invading the UK. That was their base for white slavery from.
But that's how far they got. That's what I'm saying. They got that far. They got to France.
They got to France. They got to basically Vienna.
Islam has done this before. It's gone really far, and it was only held back by the Christian, the Crusaders, by the Christian forces. And it's interesting, isn't it? At the moment, the left the communists are embracing the Muslims because the Palestine thing and the anti-Israel thing, get the Jews or whatever. Do the communists understand that the people of Islam, the people they despise, who they call the people of the book, are not just Jews, they're also Christians. So it's kind of, it's Turkey's voting for Christmas, this, isn't it?
This is a bit like Game of Thrones.
I don't watch that.
Game of Thrones.
I've heard it's good, but I've never watched it.
It's I enjoyed
well worth watching.
It's well worth watching. I enjoyed it. But it's all about a power struggle. Everyone's using each other. We know you're our enemy, but at this moment in time, we're going to use you so I can defeat a bigger enemy. And then once we defeated them, I'm going to wipe you off. It's swapping allegiances, swapping armies, swapping kings, killing kings because they're not popular. And that's what this is. So I'm sure the communists have no affinity with Islam whatsoever. They just know they're classing them as useful idiots at the moment, that we're going to use them as our foot soldiers. But people don't learn from history.
I think they are massively underestimating what they've invited in. That's what I think.
Of course they have. I don't think most people got no idea. But Many of the people who are here who are Muslims are not a problem. It's a part of the ideology that's the problem. Christianity, 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years, was basically just the same. We conquered the world. We sent armies in. We slaughtered people. The only thing that Islam is missing is a reformation, because they're still very similar to the Islam that came out of the Arabian deserts, which was a warlord, warring religion. That will change over time if we can help them have the reformation that they need.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting, because I think what Ibrahim says is there can't be that reformation because the very essence of Islam is adhering to the book of Muhammad, basically. The behaviours of Muhammad have got to be adhered to as part of the process. So I think the reformation is a lot harder in Islam than it is in...
I'm sure there will be.
It's the hadith. It's called the hadith, isn't it?
But I'm sure it can be changed, because this was the same problem we had with Christianity.
Yeah.
Where the Bible was the word of God.
Yes.
And we would burn heretics, and we would kill people. We had the Spanish Inquisition. We invaded the Middle East with our crusades because we were trying to take Christianity back to the Holy Land. All these problems we've had in other religions, and we've come through it. Islam may be a harder nut to crack.
But I think that's a very interesting point, because I think you're right. That Christianity did used to be like that, which when it was kind of hardcore. But then you just talked about Iran in the 70s, didn't you? If you look back at videos of Iran, Syria, places like this in the 70s, the women were wearing dresses, suits, the men were wearing suits. It was kind of, and colonialism had actually reduced the impact of Islam. Islam was starting to become more moderate at that point. It was only after, as you say, after the revolution in 79 that it went back to people, hijabs and all that jazz as well, wasn't it?
You're right. In the 70s, radical Islam really kicked off.
Yes.
You look at Egypt now, most people wear the burqa now in Egypt. When I was there 20, 30 years ago, no one had the burqa on.
Yeah.
There's photos from Kabul in the 70s that looked like, a Western country. It's radical Islam that's the problem, not necessarily Islam or Muslims themselves. But the weakness of the West has allowed radical Islam to gain ground and fueling it with some of the wars, but also the fact that they're never being challenged. So many of the Muslims in this country came here to escape radical Islam, to escape the poverty of the Muslim world, and came here. But then we allowed some of them to bring radical Islam with them, and we never challenged that. And if this country falls to radical Islam, which not a chance in hell it will, but if it did fall to radical Islam,
I'm not sure.
And many of those Muslim people and many of those Muslim families will then flee this country to go somewhere else away from radical Islam.
Texas,
And so we need to challenge and stop radical Islam, and that's a fight easily won, because lots of Muslims don't want it. But those Muslims are silent at the moment in this country because there's no support for them. Because every time we want a community leader on TV, we get the imam, we get the radical Muslim on TV talking about stuff. Our country, our leaders, our government always ignore the moderate Muslim voices. We go straight to the radicals, and we need to shame the radicals. We need to do what we did with the IRA. You're not allowed on TV. And we need to start spending money and promoting the moderate Muslim voices for them to start sorting out their communities, for them to sort out the radicals from their communities. But at the moment, they have no tools, they have no voice, they get no support. And they're left on their own, in which case they're terrified of these radical nutcases themselves. So they go along with it all because they'll be killed as well.
Well, I'm going to challenge you here, because you said something there very quickly and moved on, and you said there's not a chance in hell that Islam will take over or in this country. And I think my question, and I'll first of all, before you respond, I'll just refer you back to J.D. Vance, who's the running mate of Trump. And he made a joke, didn't he? And we've already mentioned it here, but I'll mention it again. He made a joke at the Republican convention, sorry, he said, we've been worrying about which Muslim country will be the first to have a nuclear weapon. It used to be Iran. It now could be Palestine. I can't remember what he said. Yeah. He said, but now actually we're now concerned it could be Britain, Great Britain.
Well, he said it is Britain.
It is Britain. It is Britain. Now they've got a Labour, a left wing. Yeah. And it was a joke, and I get it was a joke.
That was a joke to hurt the Labour government.
Yes,
this country, it was a slap in the face to Keir Starmer and his government. That's what that was.
But there's no smoke without fire, is there? Now,
lots of smoke without fire when it comes to politicians.
The perception over the pond is that Islam is getting a hold in this country.
Well, to a certain extent, it is.
Yeah.
But
but then I'll just take you a little bit further. If you look at what Islam achieved between the 8th century and I think the 1300s, up to the point, the last battle in Europe or whatever, the amount of land they dominated that went from being Christian to Muslim, because people are under the impression, aren't they, that Egypt, Syria, Palestine were all Muslim places. And and one of the interesting things, isn't it, people say, when Christians have been persecuted in these countries, Armenia, or all this persecution, and people say, oh well, they shouldn't be there then, it should be Christians. But the reason they're there is because they were there first. Yeah. They were there first. And Islam took over, and the Muslims took over. So they have been incredibly successful, the Muslims. Islam has been incredibly successful in taking land from the Christians over time and got pretty far into Europe. Well, they were in Spain for 800 years. Yep. They dominated Spain for 800 years, something like that. So when you say that there's not a chance of that happening in the UK, why, given that track record, would you say that? Because they're on the march again, aren't they?
They are. You just have to look at the history of Islam. It was easy for them to conquer North Africa, which again was all Christian at the time, because at that point then, technology was basically equal. It was all the sword, and they had a warrior religion. So people fought hard because if I die, I'm going to go see God and get 70 virgins. Europe was coming out of the Dark Ages. We weren't organised. But let's roll forward now. Islam as a political ideology is a failed ideology. You just have to look at every Muslim country in the world. Nobody wants to live in any of them. Nobody's forcing and emigrating into any of these countries. They're failed states, most of them. So they haven't got the ability to conquer the West now. They've only managed to get where they are now in the West down to weak leadership of the West. That's changing. That's going to change and harden even more so over the next 10, 20 years. The Muslim population in the UK at the moment is 6%. 6%.
That's a lot.
No, it's a lot, but they will not be taking over the UK with 6%.
No.
This country over the next decade will get a grip on radical Islam, will get a grip on mass migration, and that'll basically be the end then of radical Islam in the UK. Europe will be looking at doing the same. It's going to be
fair, we are seeing it happening in Europe now.
It's going to be tough for many, many moderate Muslims in Europe over the next 10, 20 years, because it's hard to distinguish between a moderate Muslim and a radical Muslim, because most radicals will tell you I'm moderate when some of these changes start happening.
Well, that's something when we talk about Islam and the history of Islam, I was going to talk about that, because there's two types of Muslim faces or Islamic faces. One is the Mecca face and one is the Medina face. The Mecca face was the initial part of Muhammad's creation of his ideology, the first 10 years where it was a passive and peaceful process. It was after those 10 years when he went to Medina that he became the warlord and the aggressive bit. So radical Muslims, when it suits, if they've got to present a face, they'll present the Mecca face. And this is the point you said, right? Whatever. The Medina phase is the actual one that actually has superiority over the Mecca phase, but they will use the Mecca face to present something. Islam is peace and all that jazz, basically. So that does happen. Yeah,
I'm sure that does. So basically, some Muslims are liars. aren't we all?
Yeah.
Aren't we all deceitful? Aren't we all?
Well, they're not lying technically because they're saying this is the word of Muhammad at this point here. What they're not saying is, but actually later on it became this. That's what they're saying.
Yeah. So I'm not too worried about that. All we need is strong leadership, better politicians, and all these problems can be fixed.
Yeah.
People say that Islam is not compatible with UK life. It is. Radical Islam isn't, but radical anything isn't acceptable in the UK. We just need to get a grip on it, and we've not got a grip on it because of cowardice.
I don't think Islam is compatible with UK life, and the reason that I'm saying that is not because I'm being Islamophobic.
Yeah.
It's because Islam is more than just a religion. It's an ideology. It's a way of life.
Not to all of them.
No, but the true embracing of Islam is that it's an ideology. It's not just here's a religion. Because if it was just a religion, it wouldn't be a problem, would it? Their religion is more of an ideology. It pervades the way you live and the laws you follow and the way you behave as well. That's why it's not compatible with the UK. But I think a lot of people don't understand that. They think it's just a religion. It's a way of life is Islam. It's a combination of a religion and behaving with an idea, you've got to behave as Muhammad behaves. That's what the reality of Islam is.
I don't know what that pinging was then. I actually think it might be one of these springs just pinged.
Yeah, well, wouldn't be surprised. As you can see, gentle listeners, this is the technology that's stopping this thing falling over again.
Sellotape.
A piece of sellotape holding it on.
Yeah. What you said then is the true nature of Islam,
yes.
How many people interpret it, but that's not how many Muslims in the West interpret it.
Oh, correct. No, I think you're right. So, I think a lot of Muslims don't really understand, with the greatest of respect to Muslims, don't understand what Islam really is. Yeah, and I think you're right.
And if we go on a really good PR offensive,
yes,
we can wipe out radical Islam definitely from the UK.
Yeah.
And all you're left then are with peaceful Muslims who want to get on in life, who love the country, who just happen to pray to a different God to some other people.
So
that's a success.
Yeah. What you're saying is you think it's possible if you can kind of compress the Muslims back to just the religious part of Islam. That's what you're saying, isn't it, really?
I don't think we have to compress that because I think they want to do that themselves.
Yeah.
What we have to do is support them to do it.
Okay, that's interesting.
Did you enjoy that video? I think you did. Come on now, hit that bell, subscribe, comment. Let's build this channel. I need more followers. I need more subscribers. Be part of the journey. See you soon.